Hello, and thank you for allowing this moment for yourself. You can let go of all focus now. Just allow your attention to soften, as my voice gently carries you not to the cold marble halls of Rome, not yet, but to a place of warm sand and strange gods, a place where we find the story of a boy who was not yet an emperor and perhaps never wanted to be one. Tonight, there are no complexities to solve, only the soft and simple threads of a story for you to follow if you wish, a story that begins in the sun-drenched city of Emesa. Before we drift too far, if you feel a connection to this place, you're welcome to leave a quiet like or subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a soft footprint in the sand before you continue your journey inward. And if you wish, you can leave another footprint in the comments below, letting me know your city and what time it is for you in your part of the world. It's a quiet way of knowing we are all listening together under the same moon. And so find that gentle darkness in your room, perhaps with a soft blanket pulled a little closer, as we begin our slow drift into tonight's tale. You are 14 years old. The sun of Syria is a familiar, heavy warmth on your shoulders. It's a different kind of heat than the damp, oppressive air of Rome that you've only heard about in stories. Here, in the city of Emesa, the heat into the stones of the streets and the walls of the great temple that is your entire world. You are not a prince, not a politician, not a soldier. You are Varius Avitus Basianus, but no one calls you that. To the people of this city, and to yourself, you are the high priest of the sun god, Elagabalus. Your life moves to the rhythm of the sacred, not the political. Your mornings begin not with military drills or lessons in rhetoric, but with the scent of burning incense, frankincense and myrrh, so thick in the air it feels like you could taste it. You dress not in the practical wool of a Roman, but in robes of the finest silk, dyed in vibrant purples and golds, embroidered with patterns that tell the stories of your god. Heavy gold chains rest around your neck, and your eyes, are lined with a dark powder called kohl, making them stand out against your young face. It's all part of the performance, the sacred duty. You are a living vessel for the divine, and the divine in this case is, well, it's a rock. Let's be honest, that's what it is. A large, conical black stone. It is in the heart of your magnificent temple on a golden chariot, surrounded by offerings. The priests and scribes say it is the physical manifestation of the sun god himself, a piece of the heavens that chose to fall here in Emesa. Historians of a later age will debate its exact origins, most concluding it was a meteorite, a literal star fallen to earth. But to you, it is simply God. It has no human shape, no sculpted face or defined limbs like the Roman gods. It is pure, abstract, and powerful. It doesn't need a face. It has you. Your days are spent in service to this stone, your slim figure swaying to the sound of pipes and drums. The worship of Elagabalus is not a quiet, solemn affair like the stiff ceremonies for Jupiter in Rome. It is a dance. It is a dance. It is ecstatic. You move, your silk crowd swirling around you, your feet light on the cool stone floors of the temple. You are the chief dancer, the center of the spectacle, an intermediary between the silent stone and the chanting crowd. You feel the energy of the people, their hopes and fears, all directed at the god through you. You are surrounded by power, but it's a different kind of power. It's the power of your family, specifically the women in it. Your mother, Julia Soamis, is beautiful, watchful, and deeply devout. But the true force is your grandmother Julia Maze. She is the sister of a former empress, a woman who has lived in the imperial palace in Rome, who understands the brutal games of politics and power, either politics and power, in a way you can't even imagine. Was murdered, and the man who replaced him, Macarenus, wanted her far from the capital. She watches you. You feel her gaze even when her back is turned. It's not just the loving gaze of a grandmother watching her grandson perform his sacred duties. There's something else there, something calculating. A glint of ambition. She sees your youth, your striking looks, your high-profile religious role, and she doesn't see a priest. She sees a key, a tool, a way back to the power she lost. You, of course, are mostly oblivious. You are more concerned with the choreography of the next festival, or the quality of the wine being offered to the god. You enjoy the attention, the reverence, the beauty of your life. The world outside this temple, the world outside this temple, the world of legions and senates and assassins, feels a million miles away. You hear whispers about the new Emperor Macarianus. They say he's a commoner, an upstart, that the soldiers don't respect him. Like the buzz of flies outside the temple walls. They have nothing to do with your world of silk, incense, and the silent, patient Blackstone that you serve. You have no idea that your grandmother is listening to these whispers too, and that she is about to fan them into a fire that will consume the Roman world, and you along with it. The rhythm of your days begins to change. It's a subtle shift at first, a change in the harmony of your life that you can feel more than you can see. The incense still burns, the pipes still play, but a new scent is in the air, something sharper and more metallic than myrrh. It is the scent of ambition. Your grandmother, Julia Maizet, is no longer just a watchful presence in the temple. She is a spider, and you are beginning to see the first shimmering threads of the web she is weaving. It begins in the shaded courtyards of her villa, not the sacred halls of the temple. You notice new visitors, men whose faces are hard and weathered, not soft with piety. They are soldiers, centurions from the 3rd Gallic Legion stationed nearby. They come not with offerings for the god, but for quiet, intense conversations with your grandmother. Their voices are low, urgent whispers that stop the moment you enter a room. You see your mother, Julia Soamis, in these meetings too, usually dreamy with religious fervor, now hold a sharp, excited glint. Then you start to hear the story. At first it's just a suggestion, a soft ray shaping of your past. Your mother pulls you aside one afternoon, the scent of jasmine heavy in her hair. She tells you stories of the late Emperor Caracolla, her cousin. She speaks of his visits to Emesa, his charm, his special affection for her. The implication hangs in the air, as thick as the incense in the temple. Your grandmother is more direct. She begins to openly tell her trusted circle of visitors that you are not the son of your supposed father, a quiet local official who is conveniently no longer around. No, you are the secret, illegitimate son of Caracolla himself. It's a masterstroke of political branding. The current emperor Macarianus is deeply unpopular with the army for a very simple reason. He was not a soldier from a grand family, but a bureaucrat, a praetorian prefect who had schemed his way to the top. And worse, he was a penny pincher, cutting the soldiers' pay. To the legions, he had no legitimacy, but Caracolla, for all his cruelty, was a son of an emperor. He lived with the troops, and he paid them well, and they hated his murderer, Macarianus. By claiming you as Caracolla's son, your grandmother isn't just giving you a new father, she's giving you a divine right to the throne. You are not just a priest from a backwater province, you are the rightful heir, the continuation of a beloved dynasty. It's a story so good, so powerful, that it almost doesn't matter if it's true. And this is where historians still argue. Was it a complete and brilliant fabrication, spun from whole cloth by Julia Maiz's ambition? Or was there a kernel of truth? And your mother was a beautiful woman. Was there a secret affair, a truth that your grandmother was now twisting into a weapon? The ancient sources, written by senators who despised you, paint it as a shameless lie, but the truth of what happened in a private bedroom years ago is lost to the quiet dust of history. To make the story stick, your grandmother uses a tool far more powerful than truth: money. This is the wonderfully quirky and deeply cynical secret of your family's power. They weren't just religious leaders, they were fabulously wealthy. Julia Maizet begins to funnel the vast family fortune, the temple treasury, into the pockets of the soldiers. She doesn't just sell them a story, she pays them to believe it. Each whisper of your divine parentage is accompanied by the satisfying clink of gold and silver coins. It's amazing how quickly a man's convictions can change when his purse is full. You are the centerpiece of this entire performance. You are paraded before sympathetic officers. They look at you, this beautiful, androgynous boy priest, and they are told to see the features of the battle-scarred Caracolla. They are encouraged to notice that you are about the same age a son of his would be. You smile when you're told to smile. You stand in the light so it catches the gold in your robes. You are a living doll being dressed up for a new terrifying role. And in the eyes of these hardened soldiers, desperate for an emperor they can love, and who will pay them properly, the lie begins to feel like a prophecy. The whisper is growing louder now, spreading from the villa to the barracks, a rumor carried on a desert wind promising a storm. The lie takes root. It grows faster than anyone, perhaps even your grandmother, could have anticipated. A story like this, a story of a lost prince, a rightful heir, is a powerful seed. But for a seed to sprout, it needs fertile ground imaginable for this kind of tale. You quickly learn that a legionary's loyalty is a complex and thirsty thing. It requires a steady diet of victory, glory, and most importantly, cold hard cash. The Emperor Macarianus is failing to provide any of these. Your grandmother's gold, therefore, is like a spring rain on the dry earth of their discontent. The story of you being Caracalla secret son is no longer a hushed rumor. It's an open secret, a rallying cry. Soldiers who had served under Caracalla ought to remember a striking resemblance. They see in your youthful face the shadow of their murdered commander. It's a collective act of wishful thinking, fueled by greed. The night it happens is warm, the Syrian sky thick with stars. You are woken not by the gentle chime of temple bells but by the urgent hands of your mother's servants. There is a nervous energy in the air, a sense of a held breath before a plunge. You are dressed not in your usual priestly silks, but in something more subdued, though still outrageously fine by any normal standard. Underneath it all, your grandmother has insisted you wear a small tunic that was said to have belonged to Caracalla as a boy. It's a prop, another piece of stagecraft in this elaborate play. You are smuggled out of your villa under the cover of darkness. The destination is the camp of the 3rd Gallic Legion, just outside the city. The commander, a man named Gan-Nys, who is also your mother's. Well, let's call him a close companion, has done his work well. The sentries at the gate are not surprised to see you. They are expecting you. You step into the camp, and the world changes. The soft, incense-scented bubble of your temple life bursts, replaced by the smell of sweat, leather, and nervous men. Torches cast long, flickering shadows. The soldiers, thousands of them, are gathered in the central square. They are a sea of rough faces, bearded and scarred, their eyes all fixed on you. For a moment, a wave of pure terror washes over you. These are not pious worshippers seeking a blessing. These are killers, the men who hold the fate of the empire in their calloused hands. Your grandmother, a small, indomitable figure beside you, pushes you forward. Gan-Nys raises a hand for silence, and in the sudden quiet, he begins to speak. His voice booms across the square, telling the story the soldiers are already primed to hear. He points to you, the beautiful boy bathed in torchlight. He speaks of Caracalla's blood, of a stingy, unworthy bureaucrat currently sitting on the throne. Then comes the master stroke. He announces the amount of the donative, the massive cash bonus, that will be paid to every soldier who swears allegiance to you. The sum is staggering. It is a promise of wealth beyond their wildest dreams. A single voice from the crowd shouts your new name, not your priestly title, but the name your grandmother has chosen for you. Marcus Aurelius Antonius. It is the name of Caracalla, a name that drips with imperial legitimacy. Another voice joins in, then 100, then 1,000. The sound is a physical force, a roar that shakes the very ground beneath your feet. They are not cheering for you, the boy. They are cheering for the son of Caracalla, for the promise of gold. You are lifted onto the shoulders of several burly centurions. The world tilts and sways. You look down at the sea of faces, their mouths open, shouting a name that isn't yours. You are no longer a high priest. You are a symbol, a figurehead, a lie made flesh. They have made you into a bastard son, and in doing so, they have made you a contender for the throne of the most powerful empire in the world. Historians, centuries later, will debate the precise mechanics of this night, arguing whether the soldier's devotion was to the memory of Caracalla or simply to the contents of your family's treasury. But, As you are carried through the cheering camp, you understand a simple, brutal truth. It was always both. The memory gave them an excuse, the money gave them a reason, and in that moment, the lie became your reality. The morning after your anointing by the Legion feels unreal, like a strange, elaborate dream from which you expect to wake. But the sounds of the military camp, the clang of steel, the barked orders of a centurion, the smell of campfires, are jarringly real. The lie you have been dressed in now feels like a heavy imperial robe, and you are just a boy staggering under its weight. News of the Legion's rebellion travels fast. It's carried on the desert wind, a spark of defiance that threatens to become a wildfire. The Emperor Macarianus, who is in Antioch, not too far away, hears of it. His reaction is a predictable mix of contempt and fury. Who is this child? This perfumed priest from Emesa. He dispatches one of his Praetorian prefects, Ulpius Julianus, with a force of cavalry to crush your little uprising before it can even begin. He has fatally underestimated your grandmother. The forces sent to destroy you arrive outside the legionary camp. For a moment, it feels as if the game is already over. You watch from the relativity of the ramparts, your heart pounding in your chest. The enemy cavalry looks disciplined, professional, their armor glinting in the harsh Syrian sun. They are the Emperor's elite. Your supporters, the men of the 3rd Gallic Legion, seem suddenly less confident. But your grandmother, Julia Maizei, understands the psychology of a Roman soldier better than Macarianus ever could. She knows their loyalty is not an abstract concept. It's a relationship built on shared hardship and, more importantly, shared profit. She has a counteroffer. Emissaries are sent out, not for battle, but for negotiation. They carry messages reminding the attacking soldiers of the love they held for Caracalla, and the fabulous wealth being offered in his son's name. They also bring something else. The severed heads of a few of Macarianus's local officials, a gruesome token of commitment. The battle, when it comes, is a strange and messy affair. It's less a clash of strategies and more a battle for hearts and minds, fought with gold as much as with swords. At a critical moment, as your legionaries begin to waver, your mother, Julia Soaemias, and your grandmother perform an act of stunning, theatrical bravery. They rush from the camp, right into the front lines of their wavering troops. Your mother bares her chest to the soldiers, screaming at them, asking if they are really going to abandon her and her son. It is pure melodrama, a scene worthy of the stage, and it works. Shamed and inspired, your soldiers rally. The tide turns completely when the attacking force realizes who they are fighting for. On one side, a boy claiming to be the son of the emperor they loved, backed by a family promising to make them rich. On the other, a stingy bureaucrat they despise. The choice is simple. Macarianus's men begin to desert, switching sides mid-battle. Their commander, Ulpius Julianus, is killed by his own troops. The professional force sent to crush you has instead joined you. Now, Macarianus is truly scared. He gathers the rest of his forces, primarily his own Praetorian Guard, and marches to meet you in person. The final confrontation happens near Antioch. It is a full-scale battle, and for you it is a terrifying, chaotic blur. You are not a commander. You have no idea what is happening. The man nominally in charge of your army, the Unigan NYS, has no real military experience either. The battle goes badly at first. Your legions are pushed back by the disciplined Praetorians. Panic begins to set in. Once again, it is your grandmother and mother who save the day. They ride on horseback and camels into the fray, weeping and screaming, physically blocking the retreat of their own men. This is one of those moments that ancient historians recount with a tone of bewildered amazement. It was simply not how Roman battles were supposed to be won. Victory was a matter of discipline and tactics, not the hysterical courage of 2 Syrian women. Yet, once more it works. Your army, shamed into holding its ground, pushes back. At the crucial moment, Macarianus loses his nerve. Believing all is lost, he sheds his imperial purple, disguises himself as a simple courier, and flees the battlefield. An emperor who runs is no emperor at all. His desertion causes his army to collapse. You have won. It makes no sense. The battle was not won by your strategy, nor by the tactical genius of your commanders. It was won by your grandmother's gold, your mother's theatrical hysterics, and the enemy emperor's cowardice. You are 16 years old, and through a combination of brilliant bribery and sheer dumb luck, you are now the undisputed master of the Roman world. The boy priest from Emesa has defeated the emperor. You stand on a battlefield littered with the dead, the heavy silk of your robes feeling incredibly out of place, and you have to wonder if this is a victory or the beginning of a disaster. You are the emperor. The words feel hollow, like a costume that is several sizes too large. The chaos of the battlefield gives way to the rigid formality of victory. The surviving officers of Macrinus' army, the very men who were trying to kill you hours earlier, now prostrate themselves before you, hailing you as Caesar and Augustus. Your name, Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, is on everyone's lips. The other name, your real name, Basinus, is forgotten, a relic of a life that is now over. The Roman world, or at least its eastern half, is yours. The next logical step, the one everyone expects, is to march on Rome, to enter the capital, address the Senate, and formally take your place on the Palatine Hill. But you are in no hurry. The journey from Syria to Rome becomes less of a triumphal march and more of a strange, meandering procession. Your grandmother, Julia Maze, urges caution. She knows that while you have won the army, you have not yet won the political class. The Senate in Rome is a body of old men, steeped in tradition and prejudice. They have already received your first official dispatches, which were, let's just say, not a model of tact. Instead of a humble request for their confirmation, you sent a declaration, assuming all imperial titles and denouncing both Mac, Ianus and the Senate that had supported him. It was the act of a king, not a Roman first citizen, and it ruffled a lot of feathers, so the journey west is deliberately slow. You spend the winter in Nicomedia in modern-day Turkey. This serves a practical purpose. It allows your grandmother's agents to travel ahead to Rome, smoothing the way with bribes and promises, ensuring the Senate has no choice but to ratify your claim. But it also reveals something about you. You seem more interested in the religious rites and cultural novelties of the cities you pass through than in the urgent business of governing, and you send a message ahead to Rome. A message that is, to put it mildly, a public relations disaster. It is a painting. It was your idea. You wanted to introduce yourself to the Senate before your arrival, to give them a sense of their new ruler. You commission a full-length portrait. But you do not have yourself painted in the traditional armor of a triumphant general or the sabatoga of a statesman. No, you have yourself painted exactly as you were in Emesa, as the high priest of Elagabalus. Imagine the scene in the Senate house in Rome. The senators, men with names like Marius and Claudius, are gathered in their white togas. They are nervous, awaiting news of their new teenage emperor. A large, covered painting is brought in and unveiled. They stare in stunned silence. The portrait shows a boy with dark, kohl-rimmed eyes. He's dressed not in Roman wool, but in wool, but in flowing, effeminate silks of purple and gold. Jeweled tiara. In the background, looming over you, is the image of your god. The conical black stone of Emesa. You have instructed that the painting be hung in the Senate house above the altar of victory, the very symbol of Roman tradition, forcing the senators to make offerings to it, and by extension to you and your god, whenever they convene. The shock and disgust in that room must have been palpable. This was not a Roman emperor. This was something else entirely. A unpriest king. An Oriental. The historian Herodian, writing a few decades later, describes the painting as a deliberate act of provocation, a clear signal that you had no intention of respecting their traditions. Others might argue it was simply a clueless act by a teenager who saw no distinction between his sacred role as high priest and his new secular role as emperor. Either way, it was a profound miscalculation. You thought you were showing them your divine power. They saw a decadent, alien boy who threatened everything they held dear. This is a peculiar and debated aspect of your early reign. Were you being deliberately defiant or just incredibly naive? Were you trying to force your new religion on Rome from afar, Or did you simply not understand or care about Roman sensibilities? It's likely a bit of both. You were raised to be the vessel of a god, the center of your own universe. Now, that universe had expanded to include the entire Roman Empire, but you still saw yourself at its center, with your god right beside you. The slow journey to Rome was not just a physical one. It was a cultural collision in slow motion, and this painting was the first, jarring impact. The senators looked at your portrait, at the strange clothes and the black stone, and they began to fear that it wasn't an emperor who was coming to Rome, but a religious revolution. After a journey that has taken more than a year, you finally arrive. The Roman crowds, always hungry for a spectacle, line the streets. They are a jumble of faces: shopkeepers, craftsmen, soldiers on leave, women with children perched on their shoulders, all craning their necks to get a first glimpse of the boy emperor they have heard so much about. They are expecting a figure in the mold of Augustus or Trajan. What they get is something entirely different. Your entrance into Rome is not the triumphant arrival of a military conqueror. It's the grand procession of a foreign priest. You ride in a chariot, but it's not a war chariot. It's a lavish, gilded affair. You are not wearing the simple purple bordered toga of a magistrate or the gleaming armor of a general. You are in full priestly regalia, dripping with jewels and draped in the silken robes you wore in Emesa. Your eyes are heavily made up, your face powdered. You look less like a Roman emperor and more like a character from a strange and exotic play. And you have brought your god with you. The black stone of Emesa, your silent, conical deity, has made the journey as well. It sits on its own magnificent chariot, pulled by 6 white horses. You have decreed that the horses must walk backwards, so that you, walking in front of them, can always keep your eyes on the god. It's a bizarre sight, a perversion of the traditional Roman triumph, where a victorious general would face forward, leading his spoils and captives. You are not leading anything, you are serving. You are a priest first, an emperor second. The people of Rome stare. There are cheers, of course. A new emperor always brings the promise of games and free grain. But underneath the cheers there is a current of stunned confusion. The senators and aristocrats watching from their privileged positions are not confused. They are horrified. This is worse than the painting. The painting was a warning. This is the reality. You have brought your strange, alien religion into the very heart of their world. You make your way through the city, a vibrant, jarring splash of Eastern color against the traditional white marble of Rome. You bypass the traditional first stop for a new emperor, the great temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus on the Capitoline Hill, the sacred center of the Roman state. A new emperor was expected to pay homage there, to honor the king of the Roman gods and acknowledge his place within the established order. You ignore it. Your procession heads straight for the Palatine Hill, the traditional residence of the emperors. Your god is coming home with you. This act alone is a profound statement. It signals that you are not going to be a guest in the Roman pantheon. You are staging a takeover. Your god, Elagabalus, is not just another deity to be added to the crowded Roman divine family. This is where your reign begins to diverge from mere eccentricity into something that, to the Romans, felt like active sacrilege. Previous emperors had brought foreign gods to Rome. The cult of the Egyptian goddess Isis, for example, was popular, but these were always treated as private cults, additions to the main state religion, not replacements for it. You have a very different idea. You believe Elagabalus is not just a god. He is the god, the true sun god, and all other deities are merely his servants or aspects. The strangest part, you seem genuinely confused by the Romans' lack of enthusiasm. In your mind, what you are doing is a gift. You are bringing them a more powerful, more direct connection to the divine than they have ever known. You don't see their gods as rivals to be respected, but as outdated local deities who must now bow to a universal truth. You are a monotheist, or at least a henotheist, believing in one supreme god above all others. In the polytheistic world, this is a theological gap that is almost impossible to bridge, and historians still debate the depth of your personal faith. Were you a genuine religious visionary, a true believer trying to create a syncretic new religion for the empire? Or were you a spoiled teenager simply elevating your hometown god to the supreme position out of a sense of ego and provincial pride? Whatever your motivation, the effect is the same. The Roman elites see a boy who does not respect their traditions, their ancestors, or their gods. You have arrived not a missionary for a religion of one. As you settle into the imperial palace on that first night, surrounded by your Syrian courtiers, with your black stone housed in a temporary shrine nearby, you are blissfully unaware of the deep offense you have already caused. You think you have brought enlightenment. Rome thinks you have brought a plague. The temporary shrine in the palace is not enough. A god of Elagabalus' stature, the new supreme deity of the Roman Empire, needs a home worthy of his power. And you know exactly where to build it. You choose a spot on the Palatine Hill, the most exclusive and historically significant of Rome's 7 hills, right next to the imperial palace itself. This is prime real estate, not just physically but symbolically. It's a declaration that your god is now the official neighbor and protector of the emperor. Construction begins on a magnificent new temple which the Romans will call the Elagabalus. It is a project on which no expense is spared. The finest marble is imported, and vast quantities of gold are used for decoration. It is built in the Syrian style, grand and opulent, a stark contrast to the more restrained classical architecture of the surrounding Roman temples. It is a piece of Mesa transplanted into the heart of Rome. But you don't just build a new house for your god. You decide he needs the most sacred treasures of Rome to be his house guests. You begin a process of systematic religious kleptomania. You order the most ancient and holy objects to be transferred from their own temples to the Elagabalus. This includes the eternal flame of Vesta, the sacred shields that were said to have fallen from heaven, and the Palladium, a statue of the goddess Pallas Athena believed to have been rescued from Troy and which guaranteed the safety of Rome itself. To a Roman, this was an act of unthinkable sacrilege. These objects were not mere decorations, they were the spiritual anchors of the state. Their power was tied to their specific locations and the rituals associated with them. Ripping them from their homes and placing them in the temple of a foreign rock was like cutting the city's main power lines. You, however, see it differently. You are not stealing them, you are honoring them. You are honoring them. You are honoring them. It's like bringing the most important nobles to court to pay homage to the king. You simply cannot understand why the senators are muttering in the corridors, their faces pale with horror. The worship inside the new temple is as alien as its architecture. Each morning, you perform the rites yourself as high priest. The ceremony is a spectacle of sound and color. Huge sacrifices of cattle and sheep are made, so many that the blood is said to flow in rivers from the altar. The air is thick with the smoke of incense and the sound of horns, pipes, and drums, and at the center of it all is you. You dance before the black stone, your silk robes swirling, your face painted, chanting in your native Semitic tongue. Roman senators and knights are compelled to attend these ceremonies. Imagine a stoic, conservative man like Claudius Pompeianus, a man who prides himself on Roman gravity and decorum, being forced to stand and watch his teenage emperor, dressed in what he considers to be ridiculous foreign finery, gyrating wildly in front of a meteorite. It was more than just offensive, it was humiliating. It was a calculated degradation of everything they believed made them Roman. One of the oddest and most specific details recorded by the historian Cassius, who was a senator and an eyewitness to your reign, was your practice of divinization through sacrifice. Apparently, you would inspect the entrails of the sacrificed animals to read the future. This itself wasn't unusual in Roman religion. But Dio claims you took it a step further, using the entrails of sacrificed noble children. This is almost certainly a fabrication, a piece of lurid propaganda designed to make you seem monstrous. Such accusations were a common trope used to demonize unpopular emperors. Yet, the fact that people were willing to believe it shows just how alien and frightening your religious practices seem to them. The great debate among historians is about the ultimate goal of all this. What was your grand religious plan? Were you attempting to create a single, unified religion for the entire empire with Elagabalus at its head? A sort of proto-monotheism? Or was this simply the chaotic whim of a boy with absolute power, transplanting the rituals he loved from his hometown to his new capital, with no thought for the consequences. The evidence suggests a strange mixture of both. There is a clear, systematic attempt to centralize all worship around your god. Yet, it is pursued with such a lack of political skill, such a blatant disregard for Roman feeling, that it feels less like a state policy and more like a personal obsession. You are building a new religion for your empire, but you seem to be the only one who actually wants to join it. Having established your god in his new home, you decide that he, like any great king, needs a queen. And as the supreme god, he deserves the most prestigious bride in all of Rome. Your eyes turn to a group of women who are considered the most sacred, the most untouchable in the entire empire. The Vestales, or a college of 6 priestesses, chosen in childhood from the noblest families, who dedicate 30 years of their lives to Vesta, the goddess of the hearth and home. Their primary duty is to tend the sacred fire in her temple, a flame that must never go out, as its continuation is linked to the very survival of Rome. Their defining characteristic, the source of their immense religious authority, is their chastity. The punishment for a Vestal who breaks this vow is terrifying and absolute. She is buried alive. To a Roman, the sanctity of a Vestal virgin is non-negotiable. It is a bedrock principle of their religion and their state. The idea of one of them marrying is not just illegal, it is a sacrilege of the highest order, a spiritual contamination that could bring divine wrath down upon the entire city. You, of course, think it's a wonderful idea. You see it as a symbolic masterpiece. What better way to unite your new god with the old Roman traditions than to marry him to the most revered of all Roman holy figures? A marriage between a sun god and a virgin priestess is, in your mind, a celestial wedding, a union of heavenly powers. You dismiss the horrified objections of the Senate and the priesthood with a casual wave of your hand. Your choice of bride is a Vestal named Aquilia Severa. You don't just arrange for her to be symbolically wedded to the black stone. You decide to marry her yourself. You, the Emperor and High Priest of Elagabalus, will stand in for your god. You have her removed from the house of the Vestales, a place she was never meant to leave, and you marry her in a lavish public ceremony. Your justification for this is breathtaking in its audacity. You publicly declare that it is fitting for a high priest such as yourself to marry a priestess. And then you add, with what was either incredible naivety or profound trolling, that from this divine union godlike children would be born. The city is aghast. This is not just breaking a rule, it's shattering a foundational taboo. You have taken the living symbol of Roman purity and chastity and forcibly made her your wife. The act is seen as a state-sanctioned rape of their most sacred institution. The fact that you are already married at this point, to a noble woman named Julia Cornelia Corleio, whom you quickly divorced to make way for Aquilia. You treat marriage not as a sacred contract but as a tool for your religious and personal whims. And here lies one of the interesting historical questions. What did Aquilia Severa herself think of all this? The ancient sources written by men portray her as a passive victim, a symbol of Rome's defilement. But we have no record of her own voice. Was she a terrified young woman, dragged from her sacred home to the bed of a strange teenage emperor? Or is it possible that, faced with an impossible command from an absolute ruler, she saw an opportunity? Her future was 30 years of ritual followed by a quiet retirement. As the empress, even in these scandalous circumstances, she held a position of immense power and prestige. Some historians have speculated that she, or her family, might have quietly acquiesced, seeing it as a path to influence. It is a debate that can never be settled, a human story lost behind the wall of public outrage. This marriage is a turning point. Your earlier actions, the strange clothes, the new temple, were seen as foreign and eccentric. You haven't just ignored Roman tradition, you have actively polluted it. You have taken their most cherished symbol of purity and violated it, all for the sake of a theological statement that no one but you seems to understand or appreciate. The marriage to the Vestal Virgin creates a deep, visceral anger among the Roman elite. They are beginning to realize that their emperor is not just a weird foreigner. He is, in their eyes, a religious fanatic and a monster. And monsters, in Rome, have a habit of meeting violent ends. While you are busy rearranging the divine furniture of Rome, your grandmother and mother are carving out their own spheres of influence, and in doing so further eroding the foundations of Roman tradition. Julia Mazzei, the architect of your rise, is the true power behind the throne. She is a pragmatist, attending the meetings of the Senate, listening from behind a curtain, and offering her sharp political advice. She understands that governing requires more than just dancing before a sacred stone. Your mother Julia Soaaias, however, shares your flair for the dramatic and your disregard for convention. While Mazzei works the levers of real power in the background. Soimas decides to create a new institution, one that leads the old guard of Rome spluttering in disbelief. She establishes what comes to be known as the Senecolum Mulier. This is, to put it mildly, a radical innovation. The Roman Senate was the ultimate old boys' club. It was a space defined by its masculinity, a place where generations of fathers and sons had guided the destiny of the Republic and then the Empire. Women were expressly forbidden from even entering the Senate House while it was in session. Their influence was meant to be private, domestic, wielded through their husbands and sons behind the closed doors of their villas. Your mother blows those doors wide open. She assembles a council of high-ranking women on the Quirinal Hill. Their official purpose, according to the hostile historical sources, is to deliberate on matters of female etiquette and fashion. They issue decrees on which style of dress is appropriate for which social rank, what kind of jewelry can be worn, who has the right to be carried in a litter versus a sedan chair, and whose chariot can be pulled by mules versus donkeys. On the surface, it seems almost comically trivial. The male historians of the era, like Cassius Dio, treat it with utter contempt, presenting it as a perfect example of your reign's absurdity. While the men are busy with real politics, the women are having a glorified fashion club meeting. They paint a picture of petty squabbles over hemlines and hairstyles, a frivolous distraction from the serious business of the empire. But was it really so trivial? Here historians are divided. Some take the ancient sources at face value, seeing the Senecolum as a symbol of the unnatural influence of women in your court, a sign of the world turned upside down. They argue it was an indulgence, a vanity project for your mother and her friends. Other historians, however, suggest there might have been more to it. They argue that the male senators, writing with deep misogynistic bias, may have deliberately downplayed the Senecolum's significance. In a society as rigidly hierarchical as Rome, rules of dress and etiquette were not just about fashion, they were about power. They were the visible markers of status and rank. Controlling these rules meant controlling the social grammar of the elite. Could the Senecolum have been an attempt to formalize the social power that women of the imperial court already wielded? Was it a way for your mother to create her own power base, a network of influential women loyal to her? One of the more peculiar details is that your mother, Julia Soaaias, is also given the official title of Augusta and, more shockingly, is listed among the senators with the title Clarissima. There is even evidence from coins and inscriptions that she was referred to as Mater Castra Romet Senatant of the fatherland. The title Mother of the Camp was not unheard of for an empress, but Mother of the Senate and Fatherland was a shocking appropriation of male political language. You, for your part, seem entirely unbothered by this. You were raised in a family dominated by powerful, ambitious women. To you, it probably seems perfectly natural that your mother should have a senate of her own. You attend some of the meetings, reportedly offering your own opinions on matters of style. But your real focus is elsewhere, on your god and your own increasingly personal dramas. Meanwhile, the traditional senators watch all this with a growing sense of alarm. It's one thing to have a strange boy emperor with a pet rock. It's another to have his mother creating a parallel government to regulate their wives' footwear. It is another crack in the foundations of their world, another sign that the rules that have governed Rome for centuries are being rewritten by a Syrian family who, in their view, simply do not understand what it means to be Roman. Your divine matchmaking project doesn't end with your own scandalous marriage to a Vestal virgin. You believe that your god Elagabalus, now properly housed and married to a symbol of Rome, needs to consolidate his power in the divine realm. He needs alliances. And so, you begin to treat the entire Roman pantheon as your personal, celestial dating service. Your first idea is to arrange a marriage between Elagabalus and Pallas Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare, whose sacred statue, the Palladium, you've already moved into his temple. On paper, it seems like a power couple, the mighty sun god and the wise warrior goddess. There's just one problem, which any Roman could have told you. Athena is a virgin goddess. Her identity is fundamentally tied to her chastity. You dismiss this as a minor detail. You go ahead and celebrate the wedding of the black stone to the ancient statue. The public reaction is not one of religious joy, but of quiet horror and ridicule. The Romans see you forcing one of their most revered virgin deities into a sham marriage with your foreign rock. It's another act of profound religious illiteracy, like trying to mix oil and water. It just doesn't work. The theological chemistry is all wrong. When it becomes clear that this divine union is a failure, you divorce them. You, the emperor, declare that the gods have separated. Undeterred, you seek a more suitable bride for Elagabalus. If a virgin warrior goddess is too prickly, perhaps someone with a bit more passion. Your choice lands on Urania, the Phoenician goddess of the moon from Carthage. At least this makes a bit more celestial sense. A marriage of the sun and the moon. To facilitate this union, you order the magnificent statue of Urania to be brought from its ancient and wealthy temple in Carthage all the way to Rome. This is no small undertaking. It involves a sea voyage and a grand procession. You also order that her temple treasury, all the gold, silver, and precious offerings given to her over centuries, be brought along as her dowry. It's a move that conveniently enriches your own coffers while being framed as a sacred act. When the statue arrives in Rome, you stage an enormous wedding celebration for the two deities. The entire city is expected to participate. There are lavish feasts, free distributions of food, and games. You preside over the whole affair, acting as the master of ceremonies for the wedding of a stone and a statue. For the Roman elite, it's a farcical spectacle. They are being forced to celebrate the marriage of two foreign gods, a union that has been financed by the looting of another great city's temple. This episode highlights a peculiar aspect of your religious project that scholars find fascinating. You seem to be trying to create a new divine family, with Elagabalus as the patriarch. You are not just placing him at the top of the existing pantheon, you are rewriting the pantheon itself, creating new relationships and a new hierarchy. This process, known as syncretist, the blending of different religious beliefs, was common in the Roman world. The Romans themselves had identified their god Jupiter with the Greek Zeus, for example, but you are doing it with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. You don't allow for a slow, organic blending of cultures and beliefs. You force these divine marriages with imperial decrees, treating the gods like pieces on a chessboard. Your attempt to marry Elagabalus to Minerva, the Roman name for Athena, is particularly telling. A Roman would see Minerva as a distinct personality. You seem to see her as just a name, a local manifestation of a universal divine force that you can reassign at will. One historical source, though its reliability is debated, claims you even considered a marriage between Elagabalus and Vesta herself, the most foundational and unmovable of Roman deities. The idea was apparently so shocking that even your advisors managed to talk you out of it, whether true or not. The fact that such a rumor could exist and be believed speaks volumes about how radical and alien your religious reforms appeared. You are behaving like a divine emperor in a way no Roman ruler had before. Other emperors have been deified after their deaths. A few, like Caligula or Domitian, had demanded to be treated as living gods, but you are acting as a sort of divine stage manager, the director of a cosmic play. You are the god's agent on earth, rearranging heaven itself to suit your theological vision. While you are busy micromanaging the love lives of the gods, the imperial palace on the Palatine Hill is undergoing a revolution of its own. The traditional image of the palace is one of austere power and Roman gravity. It's a place of serious men making serious decisions, of senators in sober to gas discussing troop movements and grains applies. Under your rule, it transforms into something else entirely. It becomes a theater for your whims, a playground for your favorites. a place that smells less of old parchment and more of exotic perfumes and spilled wine. You surround yourself not with the wise old senators or seasoned generals who traditionally advised an emperor. You find their company dull, their conversation tedious, their values baffling. Your inner circle is a vibrant, scandalous collection of dancers, actors, charioteers, and hairdressers. The path to power in your court is not through military valor or legal expertise, but through beauty, charm, and a willingness to indulge your every fantasy. Your appointments to the highest offices of the state become a running joke and a source of deep resentment. You make your barber the prefect of the grain supply, a position of immense importance responsible for feeding the entire city of Rome. Aide Answer from Smyrna is put in charge of a major government department. The commander of the city watch responsible for law and order is said to have been chosen for the impressive size of a particular part of his anatomy. Vulgar detail comes from the Augustan History, a late Roman collection of biographies that is notoriously unreliable and filled with sensational gossip. But like the best gossip, it contains a kernel of truth. Your appointments were based on personal affection and frivolous criteria, not on merit. You turn governance into a game. It is said that at your dinner parties, you would release tame leopards and lions among your guests after they had passed out from drink, causing them to wake in terror. Though the animals were harmless, you invent an early version of the whoopee cushion, using air-filled bladders to startle your more dignified guests when they sat down. You hold lotteries where the prizes are absurdly mismatched. One person might win 10 pounds of gold, while the next wins 10 dead flies. Your feasts are legendary for their extravagance and bizarre theatricality. You serve dishes made entirely of one color. One banquet would be all blue food, the next all green. You are said to have once smothered a group of dinner guests to death under a shower of so many rose petals that they couldn't escape. Another story from the Augustan history that is almost certainly a dramatic invention, but one that captures the suffocating decadence attributed to your court. A more believable, and in some ways more telling, detail is your obsession with exotic and impossibly expensive ingredients. You would offer your guests mountains of pheasant brains or the tongues of nightingales. You even fed your dogs bowls of goose liver, an extreme delicacy. This wasn't just about enjoying fine food, it was about demonstrating a power so absolute that it could casually waste a fortune on a dog's dinner. The palace itself is redecorated to suit your tastes. The solemn statues of old emperors and gods are joined by symbols of your Syrian religion. The corridors, once walked by stoic military men, now echo with the music of pipes and the laughter of your favorites. It is a court that runs on pleasure and personal loyalty, not on duty and tradition. This transformation is more than just a matter of style, it's a profound political statement. You are rejecting the entire Roman establishment. By elevating your low-born favorites, you are showing them that their ancient family names, their education, and their long records of service mean nothing to you. The only thing that matters is proximity to your person and a willingness to participate in your world. Historians debate the nature of this court of favorites. Was it a deliberate policy to sideline the old elite and create a new power structure loyal only to you? Or was it simply the natural behavior of a lonely, isolated teenager clinging to the company of the few people who didn't judge him, who entertained him and made him feel powerful? It was likely a combination of both. You were creating a safe space for yourself, a palace of earthly delights where you were the sun and everyone else revolved around you. But in doing so, you were creating a vacuum of competent governance and a deep well of resentment just outside the palace gates. Your personal revolution is not confined to religion and politics. It extends to the most fundamental Roman concept of all, what it means to be the emperor, the princeps, the embodiment of Roman masculinity and power. You look at the traditional attire of your office. The ruffled toga, the practical leather sandals, the short, military-style haircut. And you find it utterly unappealing. It is drab, restrictive, and coarse against your skin. You choose silks. Fine, vibrant silks imported from the farthest reaches of the East. To a Roman senator, silk is a fabric of profound moral ambiguity. It is seen as decadent, effeminate, a material that reveals the shape of the body rather than concealing it with dignified folds. It is something a wealthy woman might wear in the privacy of her home, or a prostitute might wear to advertise her wares. for a man to wear it to advertise her wares, for the emperor to wear it as his daily uniform is an abomination. But you love the feel of it, the way it flows and shimmers. You discard the toga entirely, a garment that is not just a piece of clothing, but the very symbol of Roman citizenship. You appear in public in flowing robes of purple and gold, often adorned with precious gems. You are the first Roman emperor to regularly wear purely silken garments. This seemingly small act of personal taste is a huge political statement. You are visually rejecting your Roman identity in favor of something the Romans can only describe as Oriental. Your appearance becomes a canvas for self-expression. You take to wearing heavy makeup. Your eyes are lined with black coal, your cheeks are rouged, and your skin is whitened with lead powder, just like the most fashionable, and in the eyes of moralists, the most disreputable, women of Rome. You experiment with wigs, sometimes blonde, styled in elaborate female hairdos. You are said to have plucked your body hair, another practice associated with women and men whom the Romans considered sexually deviant. You begin to blur the lines of gender in your every action. You adopt a soft, high-pitched voice and a swaying, mincing walk. You delight in being called empress instead of emperor, and lady instead of lord. You are creating a new public persona, a third gender that fits neither the rigid Roman ideal of the masculine emperor nor the constrained Roman empress. You are something else, something of your own creation. This behavior is meticulously documented by your political enemies, the senators who wrote the histories of your reign. They present it as clear evidence of your moral corruption and insanity. To them, your rejection of masculine attire is a rejection of masculine virtue, of discipline, gravity, and self-control. It is a sign that you are unfit to rule, a man who has been conquered by his own decadent appetites. But modern interpretations are more complex. Here, historians and scholars from different fields begin to ask different questions. Was this gender nonconformity a political act, a deliberate upending of the social and political order, as some have argued? By presenting yourself as neither male nor female, were you trying to elevate yourself to a divine status, beyond the mortal categories of gender, like some Eastern deities who were depicted as androgynous? Or was it something far more personal? Is it possible that you, born in a later age, might be understood in the language of transgender identity? The ancient world had no such concept, no framework for understanding a person who felt their internal gender identity did not match their physical body. They could only describe your actions through their own limited and judgmental lens, as perversion, madness, or religious ecstasy. The debate among historians is intense. Assigning modern identities to historical figures is always a risky and anachronistic exercise. We can never truly know what was in your heart or mind. Yet, the evidence of your behavior is so consistent, so radical, and so self-destructive within your own cultural context that it strongly suggests a profound and deeply felt personal reality. One of the most curious and specific details is your devotion to the goddess Cybele, or the Great Mother. Her priests, known as the Galli, were famous for their ritual self-castration after which they would live as women. You were deeply fascinated by them, participating in their ecstatic rituals. It seems you saw in them a path, a way of being that resonated with your own feelings. You were the emperor, the most powerful man in the world, yet you looked at this marginalized religious group and saw a form of freedom you desperately wanted for yourself. Your transformation extends beyond your own skin, beyond the silks and the makeup. It blossoms, or perhaps explodes, into the realm of your relationships. In the vibrant, chaotic world of your palace you find love, or something that looks like it. And in true fashion, you don't choose a partner from the Roman aristocracy. You don't form a political alliance with a noble family. You fall in love with a slave, a charioteer. His name is Heracles. He is from Caria, a region in Anatolia, and he has a striking feature that catches your eye. The head of beautiful blonde hair. Your first encounter, as the story is later told, is pure drama. You are participating in a chariot race yourself. A shockingly undignified activity for an emperor, but one you adore. The Circus Maximus is a cauldron of noise, the roar of tens of thousands of spectators pressing in. In the chaos of a turn, your chariot overturns. a tangle of imperial limbs and fine fabrics in the dust. And then he is there. Heracles, a rival in the race, is the one who helps you to your feet. In that moment, covered in dirt, your heart still pounding from the fall, you look at him. This handsome, strong athlete, a world away from the fawning, perfumed courtiers you despise, and you are utterly captivated. Heracles is brought to the palace. His life changes overnight. He goes from being a man whose body is owned by another, risking his life for the entertainment of the masses, to the emperor's most cherished favorite. And very quickly, it becomes clear this is not the standard arrangement of a powerful Roman man and his younger, lower status male lover. In those relationships, the power dynamic was rigid and clear. The emperor would be the dominant partner. You flip the script completely. You are the one who is utterly devoted, openly submissive. You begin to refer to Heracles, this former slave, as your husband. You do it in public, in front of senators and foreign dignitaries. You kiss him on the lips in the street, an act of affection that, between two men, is deeply shocking to the Roman sense of propriety. You revel in the role of the bride. You stage a lavish wedding ceremony with all the formal rites and rituals, and you are the one who plays the part of the wife. You declare, "I am the wife, the queen of Heracles." To the Romans, this is more than just an affair. It is a complete abdication of your masculine and imperial identity. The emperor, the pater patria, the father of the fatherland, is gleefully declaring himself the wife of a foreign slave. The stories that circulate from within the palace, gleefully recorded by your enemies, are even more scandalous. They claim you delight in being physically dominated by your husband. The historian Cassius writes that you would take pride in the black eyes and bruises Heracles gave you, showing them off as tokens of his powerful love and his man minds. You would tell him, "Do to me what you would do to no other," a phrase dripping with submissive desire. Here, we must tread carefully. This is the account of a deeply hostile witness. The image of the emperor being beaten by his lover is a powerful piece of political propaganda, perfectly crafted to illustrate your unnatural submission and fitness to rule. Whether these specific acts of domestic violence actually occurred, and whether you truly welcomed them as the sources claim, is a subject of intense historical debate. It is possible they are exaggerations or even outright fabrications, designed to paint you in the worst possible light. But what is undeniable is the public perception you cultivated. You wanted the world to know that in this relationship, you were not the empress. Heracles wielded immense power because of your affection. He became incredibly wealthy and arrogant, treating the highest officials of the state with contempt. People who needed a favor from the emperor learned that the surest way to get it was to go through his husband. This relationship with Heracles seems to be a desperate, public performance of the identity you craved. If you could not change your body, you could at least define your role through your relationships. You could be the wife, the beloved, the submissive partner. In a world that demanded you be a man and a ruler, you found a man you could call your husband, and, in your love for him, you attempted to unmake yourself as emperor. For a Roman aristocrat, there could be no greater treason, not against the state, but against the natural order of the universe. But even this, the public role of a wife to your beloved charioteer, isn't enough for you. It's a performance played on the grand stage of the empire, but there is a deeper, more private theater where you wish to explore the role you feel you were born to play. And so, the most scandalous rumors of your reign begin to seep from the gilded rooms of the palace, whispers that will curdle the bloom in aristocracy and forever cement your reputation as the ultimate transgressor. The story as told by your enemies is this. You set aside a specific room in the imperial palace. You remove the busts of stern-faced ancestors and the trophies of war. You have it decorated not as a chamber of state, but as a common brothel. And there, under the soft light of oil lamps, you begin a new performance. You stand behind a curtain, as the sex workers in the city sub you are a district do, with only your head and painted eyes visible. You shed your imperial robes for something more revealing, or perhaps nothing at all, and you call out to the passers-by in the palace corridors, the guards, the servants, the sycophantic courtiers. Using the soft, cooing voice of a street prostitute, you solicit them, haggling over your price, promising them pleasures with a body that is, by law and by divine right, supposed to be the most sacred and untouchable in the world. This is not a secret affair. It is a semi-public spectacle within the palace walls. You are the emperor, and you are playing the part of the lowest, most despised woman in Roman society. You are said to have boasted to Heracles about how much money you made, how many lovers you had, playfully competing with the city's actual prostitutes. One of the most bizarre and specific details to emerge from this period concerns a man named Aurelius Cioticus, an athlete from Smyrna with a fearsome reputation and an impressive physique. You hear of him, become infatuated, and have him brought to Rome. You give him the feminine-sounding pet name Zeotic and swiftly make him your new husband, displacing Heracles. The story goes that on your wedding night you, the emperor, lamented loudly that you could not bear your new husband a child. Of course, is almost certainly a hostile invention designed to ridicule you, but it captures the essence of the public persona you were creating. And so we come to the great, unanswerable question that hangs over your reign. Is any of this true? Did you actually, literally, stand behind a curtain in the palace and sell your body? The academic world is deeply divided. Many historians argue that this is pure slander, a fabrication from top to bottom. The accusation of sexual deviancy, particularly of playing the passive or female role in a sexual encounter, was a standard trope in Roman political attacks. It was the ultimate insult, a way of declaring a man unfit for power. The historian Suetonius leveled similar, though less extreme, accusations against the Emperor Caligula. It was, in effect, a character assassination tool, and you were its most extreme target. These historians argue that your enemies took your known behaviors, the cross-dressing, the marriage to Heracles, and simply invented the most depraved story they could imagine to destroy your reputation. Other historians, however, are not so quick to dismiss it. While they might not believe the story in its literal, nor a detail, they suggest it reflects a deeper truth. Your public actions were so shocking, so far outside the bounds of Roman norms, that they made these rumors plausible to your contemporaries. You were openly trying to live as a woman. You called a man your husband. You celebrated your own submission. Is it really such a huge leap to believe you might have engaged in a private, theatrical performance of what you saw as another aspect of female life? Perhaps the motivation wasn't lust or greed. You certainly didn't need the money. Perhaps it was the ultimate act of role-playing, a desperate attempt to experience a life you felt you were denied. By mimicking the actions of a prostitute, you were rejecting the identity of the emperor in the most absolute way imaginable. The emperor was the ultimate possessor. The prostitute was the ultimate possessed. By choosing to be the latter, you were committing a kind of identity suicide, killing the emperor so that the empress you felt yourself to be could live. It was a strange, dangerous, and deeply sad performance in a theater of one. The performances in the palace, playing the wife, playing the prostitute, are still just that, performances. They are roles you can put on and take off. But the feeling, the deep and persistent sense that you are in the wrong body, does not go away when the makeup is wiped off and the silk robes are put aside. And so you embark on the most radical and, in the eyes of your contemporaries, the most insane quest of your life. You decide you want to change your body. You begin to make public inquiries. You, the Emperor of Rome, start hunting for a surgeon. You summon the most renowned physicians in the empire to the palace. These are men of science, men who have spent their lives studying anatomy, setting bones, and prescribing herbs. They arrive expecting to be consulted on a matter of state health or perhaps a minor imperial ailment. Instead, you present them with a medical challenge unlike any they have ever encountered. You ask them if they can perform a surgery. You want them to create for you the one thing that nature, in your view, has denied you. The historical sources are quite explicit about this. Cassius Dio claims you asked your physicians to devise a contrivance to make a woman of him. You offer them staggering sums of money, promising them wealth beyond their wildest dreams and the highest honors in the empire if they can succeed. You are trying to invent a form of surgery that the world will not see for another 2,000 years. The physicians are terrified. They are caught in an impossible position. On one hand, they have a direct order from an absolute monarch who is known for his volatile temper. To refuse the emperor is a dangerous, potentially fatal act. On the other hand, what you are asking is medically impossible. They have no knowledge of the complex anatomy, no surgical techniques, no understanding of hormones or plastics that would be required for such a procedure. To them, your request is not a medical problem. It is a sign of divine madness. They stammer their apologies. They explain, with as much deference as they can muster, that the art of medicine has its limits, that what you are asking is beyond the power of any mortal man. You become enraged. You see their refusal not as a statement of medical fact, but as a personal failure, a lack of will. You cannot comprehend that there is something your power and wealth cannot buy. This quest for a physical transformation becomes a public obsession. The story of the emperor begging his doctors to change his sex spreads through the city. For the Roman elite, it is the final proof that you are not just a bad emperor, but a deranged one. Their concept of mos maiorum, the way of the ancestors, was based on accepting your place in the natural order of things. You were born a man, therefore you must live as a man. Your attempt to defy this order is seen as an act of cosmic rebellion, an offense against the gods and nature itself. Here, once again, the historical debate rages. Did you truly, seriously, make this offer to your physicians? Or is this another slander, the most extreme and bizarre of all, invented by your enemies to portray you as a freak of nature? The account comes primarily from Cassius, a man who despised you. It's entirely possible that he invented the story or exaggerated a passing, drunken comment to create the ultimate symbol of your unnatural reign. However, many historians are inclined to believe that there is a core of truth to the story. It is so specific, so strange, and so consistent with all your other documented behaviors. The cross-dressing, the marriages to men, the desire to be called empress. That it feels psychologically plausible. It seems like the logical, desperate endpoint of your journey. Having tried to live as a woman in every social and behavioral way possible, the final frontier was the physical. It was a desire born not of a whim but of a deep and abiding conviction about who you were. One of the most poignant details in Dio's account is his claim that you had already selected the man you would marry in a formal wedding as a woman, once the surgery was complete. The man you chose was already a Theotokos, the powerfully built athlete you had brought from Smyrna. It was for him that you wanted this new body. This detail, whether true or not, adds a layer of tragic humanity to the story. It wasn't just an abstract desire. It was tied to a hope for a specific kind of love and a specific kind of life, a life that the science and the prejudices of your time made utterly impossible. While you are consumed by your personal and religious dramas, arranging divine weddings, performing in the palace, and searching for a surgeon, the actual machinery of the Roman Empire continues to grind on. But the person in the driver's seat is, to put it mildly, not paying attention to the road. Your method of governing is not based on policy or precedent, but on whim, fancy, and the influence of your court favorites. The Roman state was a complex bureaucracy. It required competent governors for its provinces, skilled generals for its legions, and experienced magistrates to run the city of Rome. Traditionally, these posts were filled from the senatorial and equestrian classes, men who had spent their lives working their way up a well-defined career path, the cursus honorum. It was a system based, in theory, on experience and merit. You tear that system apart. You see these important positions not as public trusts, but as party favors to be handed out to your friends. As mentioned before, key roles are given to dancers, charioteres, and barbers. But the criteria for promotion become even more absurd. The historian Cassius, ever your harshest critic, claims that you would appoint men to high office based on the size of their genitals. A detail so vulgar it's almost certainly an exaggeration, but one that captures the sense of outrage and disgust among the traditional elite. Even if that specific detail is false, the reality is not much better. You elevate your lover, the charioteer Heracles, to a position of immense, though unofficial power. You attempt to formally name him Caesar, effectively your designated heir. This is a step too far, even for your mother and grandmother, who recognize that the army and senate would never accept a former slave as the future emperor. They manage to talk you out of it, but the damage is done. The very suggestion shows a complete disregard for the concept of imperial succession. You sell public offices. This is not unheard of in Roman history, but you do it with a brazenness and on a scale that is shocking. Governorships, military commands, and priesthoodess are sold to the highest bidder, often to your court favorites who act as middlemen and take a cut for themselves. Competence is irrelevant. The only qualification is the ability to pay. This leads to rampant corruption. The men who buy these offices then use their positions to extort as much money as possible from the people they govern in order to make a profit on their investment. The empire at a provincial level begins to suffer under the rule of greedy and unqualified officials. The Senate, the traditional advisory body of the emperor, is treated with open contempt. You rarely attend its sessions. When you do, you often bring your mother or grandmother, a breach of all protocol. You mock the senators, seeing them as pompous, irrelevant old men. Their advice is ignored, their authority is undermined, and they are forced to participate in your buzz or religious ceremonies. They are powerless to stop you, but their resentment simmers, a silent, gathering poison. This is a point that historians often emphasize to explain your eventual downfall. While your religious and personal scandals were shocking, it was your catastrophic mismanagement of the state that truly sealed your fate. The Roman power structure could tolerate a certain amount of eccentricity in its emperors, but it could not tolerate an emperor who threatened the very foundations of that structure, the career paths, the sources of wealth, and the sense of order that held their world together. By appointing your favorites and selling offices, you were not just being a bad emperor, you were threatening the livelihoods and the status of the most powerful men in Rome. One of the more quirky and debated aspects of your administration is your supposed creation of new taxes. You are said to have levied taxes on just about everything. The sources claim you taxed the owners of city properties based on the smoke that came from their chimneys. More famously, you are accused of placing a tax on the services of prostitutes in the city's brothels and even on the urine collected from public latrines, which was a valuable resource used by tanners. This last tax is also famously attributed to the much earlier Emperor Vespasian, who supposedly said money does not stink. Whether you were simply reviving an old tax, or if this is another case of a stock accusation being thrown at an unpopular emperor, is a matter of historical debate. But the stories stick, painting a picture of a ruler who is not only corrupt and incompetent, but also grasping and ridiculous. While the senators are seething in their villas and the generals are muttering in their barracks, what do the ordinary people of Rome think? The million or so inhabitants of the city. The shopkeepers, the artisans, the laborers, the unemployed masses who live in sprawling, crowded apartment blocks known as insul. How do they see their strange, gender-bending, sun-worshipping emperor? For the most part, their reaction seems to be a mixture of confusion, amusement, and a profound sense of detachment. Your life in the palace is a world away from their daily struggle for survival. Their primary concerns are simple and immediate. Is there enough cheap grain to make bread? Are the public baths open and the aqueducts flowing? And perhaps most importantly, are there entertaining games in the circus and the Colosseum? This is the famous Roman concept of bread and circuses, paena mezzo sens, the idea that a ruler could keep the urban masses happy and docile by providing food and entertainment. And in this at least you do not fail them. You are a showman at heart. Your religious processions are magnificent spectacles. Your public feasts are lavish. You sponsor chariot races and gladiatorial games. As long as the grain all continues to be distributed on time and there is a good show to watch, the people are willing to overlook a great deal of strange behavior from the man at the top. They watch your processions, the ones where you dance before the black stone or lead a chariot pulled by white horses walking backwards. They probably find it bizarre. The sight of their emperor in silk robes and makeup must have been a constant topic of gossip in the marketplaces and taverns. But it doesn't directly affect their lives. It's just the latest strange story about the fantastically wealthy and powerful people who live on the Palatine Hill. To a man who spends his day hauling sacks of wheat at the docks, the emperor's choice of clothing is far less important than the price of wine. However, your actions are not entirely without consequence for the populace. Your decision to marry a Vestal virgin, for example, would have been genuinely unsettling. The Vestales were seen as the spiritual protectors of the city. Violating their sanctity was thought to invite the wrath of the gods, which could manifest as plague, famine, or fire, disasters that would fall most heavily on the poor. So, there is a low-level current of anxiety, a feeling that your actions are spiritually dangerous and might bring bad luck upon the city. The historical sources being written by senators tell us very little about the true feelings of the common people. The voice of the Roman mob is usually only heard when it is rioting, but we can infer their attitude from their inaction. For the first 3 years of your reign, there are no major food riots, no popular uprisings against you in the city of Rome. The people watch, they whisper, they gossip, but they do not act. One peculiar detail that gives a small insight into the public mood is the circulation of satirical poems and graffiti. This was a common Roman way of expressing political discontent. Walls in the city would be scrawled with crude drawings and witty, often obscene, verses mocking the powerful. While very few examples survive, the ancient historians mention that such things were widespread during your reign. These would have been the ancient equivalent of internet memes, spreading through the city, allowing people to share a laugh at your expense and express their disapproval in a relatively safe way. The debate among social historians is about how deep the popular discontent actually ran. Was their passivity a sign of tacit acceptance, or was it simply a reflection of their powerlessness? Some argue that as long as the state's basic functions continued, the populace simply didn't care who was emperor or what they did in private. Others argue that your behavior created a slow-burning crisis of legitimacy. An emperor was supposed to be a figure of earned respect. By making yourself a figure of ridicule, you were eroding the very foundations of the imperial office. The people might not be ready to overthrow you, but they would certainly not lift a finger to save you as someone else tried. Their loyalty was a mile wide and an inch deep. They were spectators at the grand, bizarre theatre of your reign, and they were waiting to see the final act. For now, they would take the free fruit and enjoy the show. The whispers in the palace have changed. For years they have been a symphony of gossip about your clothes, your lovers, your strange god. Now a new note has crept in, something colder and sharper. It is the sound of genuine political discontent. Your grandmother, Julia Maizay, hears it more clearly than anyone. She is the one who put you on the throne, the architect of the entire grand improbable scheme, and she's beginning to realize that her creation is about to bring the whole house down on top of her. She sees the signs everywhere. The senators who once hid their contempt behind forced smiles now barely bother to conceal their disgust. More importantly, she hears the reports from the Praetorian Guard, the elite soldiers stationed in Rome who are the ultimate arbiters of an emperor's life and death. They are soldiers, and they are embarrassed by their commander-in-chief. They swore an oath to a son of Caracolla, a military man. They got a priest who wears makeup and calls a charioteer his husband. Their loyalty is stretched to its breaking point. Julia Maizay is, above all else, a survivor. She decides it's time to invest in some political insurance, and that insurance has a name: Bassianus Electionos. He is your cousin, the son of your aunt, Julia Mama E. He is only about 13 years old, a few years younger than you, and he is everything you are not. Where you are flamboyant, he is reserved. Where you are impulsive, he is studious. Where you embrace every exotic novelty, he is being carefully educated in the classical Roman tradition. His mother, Mama E, is as ambitious as your own, but far more cunning and discreet. She has kept her son out of the scandalous limelight of your court. Presenting him as a model of quiet Roman virtue, he is the perfect antidote to you. Your grandmother comes to you. We don't know exactly how this conversation went, and historians can only speculate about the precise words used in this monumental family showdown. Was it a cold, logical argument? A screaming match? A series of relentless, grinding conversations over many weeks? Whatever the method, the result is the same. She forces you to adopt your cousin. The argument she presents is clever. She doesn't tell you that you are a failure who needs to be replaced. She frames it as a way to strengthen your position, She tells you that you are too divine, too preoccupied with the tedious day-to-day business of the empire. You need a Caesar, a junior partner, to handle the boring stuff, the military paperwork, the meetings with senators. By adopting the popular, unrespectable Alexianos, you will appease the soldiers and the Senate, leaving you free to continue your spiritual work. You are not a fool. You can feel the shift in the currents of power. You know this is a threat. To name an heir is to create a rival, an alternative. But you are cornered. Your grandmother still controls the family's immense wealth, and she has the shrewder political mind. Your own mother, Julia Soaemi, is wrapped up in your real allies outside your circle of favorites, who have no real power. Reluctantly, resentfully, you agree. A grand ceremony is held. You stand before the assembled Senate, a strange and jarring sight in your silken robes, and you formally adopt your young cousin as your son and heir. He is given the title of Caesar, and he is given a new name. He is no longer Alexianos. He is now Alexander. The choice of name is a stroke of branding genius by Maze. Alexander is not a traditional Roman name. It is the name of the greatest military conqueror the world had ever known, Alexander the Great. It is a name that speaks of masculinity, of power, of martial glory. It is a name designed to appeal directly to the soldiers. The message is clear. Here is your new hero. Here is the boy who will grow up to be the kind of emperor you have been missing. The effect is immediate and profound. The Senate is hugely relieved. The soldiers are pleased. They now have a focus for their loyalty, a respectable young prince who looks and acts like a proper Roman. Your cousin Alexander, guided by his mother and grandmother, plays the part perfectly. He is respectful, serious, and spends his time with military trainers and distinguished tutors, not dancers and fortune-tellers. Their rival court begins to form within the palace, a quiet, conservative shadow court centered around the young Caesar, and it is everything that your court is not. You were told this would secure your power. You can see now that it has just started a countdown to your demise. The plan works better than Julia Maze could have hoped, and far worse than you could have feared. The city of Rome falls in love with your cousin. Alexander the Caesar is everything they wanted in a ruler. He is young, handsome in a conventional Roman way, and carries himself with a seriousness that belies his years. Senators who felt humiliated by you now flock to pay their respects to him. Soldiers of the Praetorian Guard, who averted their eyes when you passed in your silks, now cheer when Alexander appears for his military drills, looking like a proper little soldier. You watch all of this with a growing sense of panic and a bitter, corrosive jealousy. You were supposed to be the sun, the center of the universe. Now a second, smaller sun has appeared in your sky, and everyone seems to be turning towards its light, leaving you in the cold. You were told that adopting Alexander would free you to focus on your religious duties, but you find you can't focus on anything but the rising popularity of the boy who is supposed to be your son and heir. Your relationship with him sours almost immediately. You are teenagers living in the strange high-pressure environment of the imperial palace, and a classic sibling rivalry plays out on the grandest possible stage. You resent him for being so effortlessly popular. He, guided by his mother and grandmother, is likely wary and a little afraid of you, his erratic and all-powerful father. You begin to regret your decision, and you start to act out, trying to reclaim the spotlight. You issue a decree forbidding senators from visiting him. You try to strip him of his tutors, claiming that a Caesar doesn't need so much education. You start spreading rumors that he is not as virtuous as he seems, that he is secretly as decadent as you are. None of it works. It only makes you look petty and cruel, and makes Alexander seem like a victim, which only increases his popularity. The jealousy coalesces into a murderous paranoia. You become convinced that Alexander is not just a rival, but a mortal threat. You believe that your grandmother and aunt are plotting to replace you with him, and you decide that the only way to secure your throne is to eliminate the competition. Your first attempts are clumsy and almost laughably inept. You order your palace guards to kill him. But the guards, like everyone else, have developed a fondness for the young Caesar. They refuse the order. This is a stunning moment of insubordination. The emperor has given a direct command to kill, and his own soldiers have defied him. It is a clear sign that your authority is collapsing. Undeterred, you try a more subtle approach. You start a rumor that Alexander is gravely ill, close to death. Your hope is to gauge the reaction of the Senate and the army. If they accept the news calmly, you can proceed with a real assassination plot. If they are upset, you will know the danger. It is a foolish and transparent gambit. The news of Alexander's illness spreads through the city, and the reaction is exactly what you feared. The Senate is thrown into a state of alarm. And more dangerously, the soldiers of the Praetorian Guard are furious. They suspect foul play. They believe you are behind it. They refuse to perform their duties and begin to gather ominously at their barracks, demanding to see their beloved Caesar alive and well. Now you are the one who is terrified. The Praetorians are on the verge of open mutiny. Your mother and grandmother rush to you, telling you that you have gone too far, that you must fix this immediately. They force you into a chariot. You have to ride in person to the Praetorian camp with Alexander sitting beside you, looking perfectly healthy. Imagine the scene. You, the emperor, are forced to appear before your own soldiers, like a naughty child being made to apologize. You arrive at the camp, and the soldiers greet Alexander with wild cheers. They greet you with a stony, menacing silence. They have made their preference brutally clear. You are forced to make a humiliating speech, blaming your enemies for the false rumors, and you promise to dismiss your most disreputable favorites, the dancers and charioteers who the soldiers despise. You have survived the immediate crisis, but at a terrible cost. You have revealed your murderous intentions, and you have been publicly humiliated by your own army. The Praetorian Guard now sees itself not just as your guards, but as Alexander's protectors. This is a crucial and fascinating point that historians focus on. The Guard, who for centuries had been the emperor's personal tool, have now unofficially switched their allegiance. They are no longer guarding the throne, they are guarding the heir, and everyone in Rome knows what that means. You are no longer the master of your own house. You are a prisoner in your palace, and your jailers are the very men who are supposed to protect you. The ride back from the Praetorian camp is a journey of humiliation. You sit beside Alexander in the chariot, the cheers for him still ringing in your ears, a stark contrast to the cold silence that met you. You have been exposed. Your clumsy plot has not only failed to remove your rival, but it has elevated him, transforming him from a popular heir into a protected icon. You have shown your hand, and in doing so, you have lost the game. But your jealousy and paranoia will not let you accept defeat. Back in the palace you fume. You promised the soldiers you would dismiss your inner circle of favorites. The men like your husband Heracles. It was a promise made under duress, and you have no intention of keeping it. These people are your only friends, your only comfort in a world that has turned against you. To send them away would be to admit defeat, to surrender to the old guard of Rome. Instead, you double down. You decide that the problem was not the plot itself, but its execution. You need to reassert your authority, and you decide to do it by making an example of those who defied you. You draw up a list of senators and knights who have been the most vocal in their support for Alexander. You order their arrest and execution. You are the emperor after all. You have the power of life and death. This is a classic tyrant's move, an attempt to rule through fear when you can no longer rule through respect. But you have fundamentally misjudged the situation. Your authority is no longer absolute. It is a hollow shell. When your agents move to arrest the targeted senators, they are met with resistance. The city guard, and even some factions within the Praetorians, quietly protect the condemned men. Your orders evaporate into the Roman air. No one is listening anymore. Now, the fury of the Praetorian Guard, which had been simmering, boils over. They see your attempt to punish Alexander's supporters as a direct attack on them and on the Caesar they have chosen to protect. They are no longer just grumbling in their barracks, they are on the verge of open revolt. The ancient sources describe a tense standoff that lasts for several days. The soldiers refuse to come out of their camp, a clear act of mutiny. You, in turn, barricade yourself in the palace, surrounded by the few guards still loyal to you and your coterie of terrified favorites. You try one last, desperate gambit. You decide to appeal directly to the other military units in the city, the urban cohorts and the city watch, hoping to play them against the Praetorians. It is a catastrophic miscalculation. These other soldiers have no more love for you than the Praetorians do. They see a weak, isolated, and increasingly erratic emperor lashing out in his death throes. Your appeal for their support is met with contempt. The final straw is your treatment of Heracles. Instead of dismissing him as you promised, you cling to him, perhaps even elevating his status in a defiant gesture. For the soldiers, Heracles the charioteer husband is the living symbol of everything that is wrong with your reign. Your refusal to get rid of him is a personal insult to their military values. Historians debate the exact sequence of events in these chaotic final days. The sources are often contradictory and colored by propaganda. Was there a formal plan by the Praetorians to assassinate you, or was it a spontaneous uprising? Did your grandmother, Julia Maizet, give a secret nod of approval to the mutineers, deciding it was finally time to cut her losses and sacrifice her grandson to save the dynasty? This is one of those moments where the official history is murky, but the outcome is brutally clear. The Praetorian Guard has made its choice. They are no longer debating what to do. They are preparing to act. The fury that began with your clumsy attempt to fake Alexander's death has now hardened into a lethal resolve. They see you not as their emperor, but as a threat to the stability of the state and an enemy of their chosen Caesar. You are a dead man walking, and the only question is how many more steps you will be allowed to take before they strike. The air in the palace is thick with fear. The normal rhythms of imperial life have broken down. The corridors, usually bustling with servants and officials, are strangely quiet. People walk with their heads down, avoiding eye contact, speaking in hushed tones. The scent of incense from your private chapels cannot mask the metallic chapels. Everyone knows the end is near. The only questions are when and how. The Praetorian Guard is in a state of open mutiny. They have barricaded themselves in their camp, the Castra Praetoria, a formidable fortress on the edge of the city. But they are not just passively waiting. They are actively communicating with the Senate, with the commanders of other military units, and with your mother's ambitious sister, Julia Maizet. They are building a coalition. They are ensuring that when they make their move, no one will stand in their way. Your grandmother, Julia Maizet, makes a final, cold calculation. She has played the game of Roman power for decades, and she knows when a piece is lost. You are that piece. She has tried to manage you, to contain you, but your erratic behavior and murderous jealousy towards Alexander have made you a liability she can no longer afford. Her loyalty shifts entirely to her other grandson, the safe, controllable, popular Alexander. The dynasty must be preserved, even if it means sacrificing you. It is a brutal decision, but she is a brutal woman. She gives her tacit approval to the Praetorians. The last shield of protection you had is gone. You are now almost completely isolated. Your only companions are your mother, Julia Soaemias, who is bound to you by love and shared destiny, and your small circle of favorites who are trapped in the palace with you, knowing that your fall will also be their own. You oscillate between moments of panicked activity and a kind of fatalistic paralysis. You consult your astrologers and soothsayers, desperately looking for a favorable omen, a sign that you can still turn the tide. They offer you only platitudes and evasions. The choice of the Praetorian Guard becomes brutally public on the morning of March 11th, 222 AD. It begins with a staged event. The soldiers demand that you hand over to them your two most powerful and hated favorites. Your husband, the charioteer Heracles, and the Praetorian prefect Mazion, a man you had elevated from being a dancer to the highest military post in the city. It is an ultimatum. You refuse. To give them up would be a total surrender, a final admission that you are no longer in command. Instead, you order the few guards still loyal to you to arrest the Praetorian soldiers who brought the message. It is a final, suicidal act of defiance. The muse of your action reaches the Praetorian camp, and it is the spark that ignites the powder keg. The mutiny becomes a full-blown insurrection. The soldiers pour out of their camp, their swords drawn, their standards held high. They are not marching to protect the emperor, they are marching to kill him. Their destination is the imperial palace on the Palatine Hill. Their proclaimed goal is to liberate the young Caesar Alexander from your corrupting influence. This is their legal and moral justification. They are not rebels or assassins, they are loyalists, acting in the name of the true heir. In the streets of Rome, no one tries to stop them. The city watch steps aside. The people watch from their windows and rooftops, silent spectators to the fall of a tyrant. The Praetorians reach the Palatine Hill and storm the palace. There is some brief token resistance from the handful of guards who have remained loyal to you, but they are quickly overwhelmed. The soldiers, men who know the layout of the palace intimately, spread out, their heavy sandals clattering on the marble floors. They are a tide of angry steel, and they are hunting for you. The guards have made their choice. There is no more room for negotiation, no hope of escape. The final act of your reign has begun, and it will be short, and it will be bloody. The sound of the Praetorians storming the palace is a sound you will never forget. It's not the orderly tramp of a disciplined unit on parade. It is the roar of a mob, the clang of steel, the splintering of wood as ornate doors are kicked from their hinges. It is the sound of your world ending. Panic erupts. Your favorites, the dancers and barbers you made into powerful men, scatter like startled birds. They know they are targets too. They try to hide, to disguise themselves as servants, to find some forgotten corner of the sprawling palace complex where they might escape the soldiers' wrath. For most of them, there is no escape. Heracles, your beloved husband, is caught and killed. Others are cut down in the corridors and gardens. The Palace of Delights becomes a slaughterhouse. You and your mother, Julia Ace, are together in your private apartments when the attack begins. The bond between you, always intense, is now the only thing left. She is the one who schemed with your grandmother to put you on the throne, who encouraged your religious fervor, who stood by you through every scandal. Her fate is inextricably tied to yours. You run. Hand in hand, you flee through the familiar, luxurious corridors, which now seem like a terrifying labyrinth. You are no longer the emperor and his mother. You are two desperate fugitives in your own home. The screams of your dying friends echo behind you. The shouts of the soldiers calling your name are getting closer. Where can you hide? The palace is vast, but it offers few true hiding places for a boy of 18 dressed in imperial silks. You think of a chest, a large ornate one used for storing linens or tapestries. It's a child's hiding place, a desperate, flimsy hope. You and your mother climb inside, pulling the heavy lid down over you. You huddle together in the dark, cramped space, the scent of cedar and old fabric filling your nostrils. You try to quiet your breathing, listening to the heavy, booted footsteps thumping past your hiding place. For a few moments there is silence. Maybe they have passed. Maybe you will be overlooked. But it is a false hope. The soldiers are systematic. They know you are in the palace somewhere. They begin a thorough search, room by room, overturning furniture, slashing tapestries. This moment, the two of you hiding in a chest, is a subject of some historical debate, as are many of the specific details of your final day. The historian Herodian provides this vivid, almost novelistic detail. Other sources, like Cassius Dio, are less specific, simply stating you were found in a suburb. But the image of the emperor and his mother hiding in a piece of furniture has a powerful, tragic resonance. It captures the utter collapse of your imperial dignity, the reduction of the master of the world to a terrified child hiding from monsters. They find you. A soldier wrenches the lid of the chest open, and the sudden light is blinding. You stare up into the hard, bearded faces of the men who were supposed to be your protectors. There is no pity in their eyes, only a cold, grim satisfaction. You are dragged out. You and your mother are pulled to your feet, your fine robes torn and dusty. This is the moment where a traditional Roman emperor, even in defeat, might have tried to maintain some shred of dignity. He might have faced his killers with a stoic phrase, or asked to fall on his own sword. You do not. You cling to your mother and she clings to you. You weep. You offer them money, titles, anything they want, but it is too late for bargains. The soldiers are not here to negotiate. They have a mandate from their comrades, and very likely from your grandmother, to finish this. Your pleas are met with contemptuous silence. They drag you both from the room, your feet stumbling on the polished floors, pulling you towards your final, undignified destination. The soldiers don't kill you in the opulent throne room or the sunlit gardens of the palace. They want your end to be as squalid and humiliating as they believe your reign to be. They drag you and your mother out of the main palace complex and towards the servants' quarters, a less glamorous area of workshops, storerooms and latrines. The final moments are a chaotic, brutal scrum. You and your mother are surrounded by a mob of angry soldiers. They are shouting insults, spitting at you. You are 18 years old. Your mother is by your side, trying to shield you with her own body, a final, futile act of maternal protection. They kill her first, right in front of your eyes. A sword is thrust and the woman who gave you life, who made you an emperor, collapses at your feet. Her death is a brutal, necessary act for the soldiers. They know that as long as she lives, she might try to stir up trouble, to rally some loyalist faction to avenge you. Her death extinguishes the last ember of your family's support. Then they turn on you. Your life ends there, in a filthy corner of your own palace. The specific location, according to the most lurid and hostile sources, is a latrine. You, the high priest of the sun god, the man who called himself emperor, are cut down in a toilet. This detail is almost certainly a deliberate piece of post-mortem character assassination. A final insult concocted by your enemies to forever associate your name with filth and degradation. Whether it happened in latrine or a simple alleyway, the truth is the same. Your end is swift, violent, and utterly without honor. But for the soldiers, your death is not enough. They need to desecrate the body to make a statement that will echo through the city. They mutilate your corpse. They try to stuff your body into a sewer drain, but it won't fit. The dark humor of the situation is not lost on the ancient historians who record this. Even in death, you are an inconvenience. So they attach weights to your body, and they drag it through the streets of Rome. This is the ultimate degradation, a spectacle of posthumous punishment. The people of Rome, the same crowds who had watched your strange religious processions with confused amusement, now line the streets to watch this gruesome parade. They see the body of the boy they had once called emperor, now a mangled piece of meat being pulled through the dirt. Their reaction is not one of pity, but of grim approval. They have their bread, and now they have their circus. Your final resting place is the Tiber River. The soldiers haul your body to the Aemilia and bridge and throw it into the murky, flowing water. The act is symbolic. In Roman belief, a person who was not properly buried could not find rest in the afterlife. Their spirit was doomed to wander the earth. By throwing you into the river, they are not just killing you, they are attempting to obliterate your soul. This is the brutal, undignified end of your reign. It began with the promise of divine favor, a celestial boy priest destined for glory. It ends in blood and filth, your body tossed away like garbage. Your cousin Alexander, now 17, is immediately hailed as the new emperor. Your grandmother, Julia Maizet, has successfully executed the most ruthless act of political pruning in her family's history. She has cut off the diseased branch to save the tree. The city of Rome breathes a collective sigh of relief. The strange, unsettling dream of your rule is finally over, and now the work of erasing you from memory can begin. With your body floating somewhere in the Tiber, the Roman establishment gets to work. The task now is not just to replace you, but to erase you. You have been a stain on their history, an aberration, a fever dream they are desperate to forget. The process is official, legal, and thorough. It is called damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory. The Senate convenes. The same men who had been forced to stand in your temple and watch you dance, who had bitten their tongues as you promoted your favorites and scandalized their city, are now free to speak their minds. And they do so with a vengeance. A decree is passed. Your name, Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, is to be struck from the official record. You are now to be referred to only by a derogatory nickname, one that links you to your strange god. A name you never used in your lifetime now becomes your eternal identifier, a permanent mark of shame. The decree is sent out across the entire empire from Britain to Egypt. Stone emissions are dispatched to every public monument, every archway, every altar where your name has been carved. With a hammer and chisel, they painstakingly chip away the letters of your name. It is a slow, laborious process of historical deletion. An inscription that once read the Emperor Marcus Aurelius Antoninus now has a conspicuous, chiseled-out blank space. You have become a hole in the public record, a deliberate void. The coins bearing your image are recalled and melted down. Statues of you are toppled and destroyed, their marble heads smashed, their bronze forms melted for other uses. Your religious edicts are all rescinded. The black stone of Emesa, your beloved god, is unceremoniously packed up and shipped back to Syria. Its temple on the Palatine Hill is rededicted, cleansed of your foreign rites. The sacred objects you borrowed from other temples, the eternal flame, the palladium, are carefully and respectfully returned to their rightful homes, as if the city is trying to put its spiritual furniture back in the correct order. The condemnation extends to everyone associated with you. Your mother, Julia Ayres, is also subjected to the damnatio memoria. She becomes the first woman in Roman history to have her memory officially condemned by the Senate. The favorites you elevated are hunted down and killed. The laws passed during your reign are reviewed, and many are annulled. It is a systematic attempt to pretend that the last 4 years simply didn't happen. And this is where a great historical irony lies. In their desperate attempt to erase you, they ended up immortalizing you. The very act of damnatio memoria is what makes you so fascinating to future generations. The blank spaces on the inscriptions are not empty, they are loud. They scream of a story so scandalous that the authorities try to silence it. They are an invitation to historians, a challenge to figure out who this person was and what they did to deserve such a thorough and violent deletion. The historical sources that survive are, without exception, written by your enemies. Cassius Dio was a senator who witnessed your reign and despised you. Her Odeon wrote to generation later, relying on the hostile accounts of others. The August and History is a late Roman work filled with sensational gossip. There are no friendly sources. No one from your inner circle wrote a memoir. A funhouse mirror that exaggerates your features and turns you into a caricature of a debauched Oriental tyrant. The debate for historians, then, is a complex one. How do we read these hostile sources? How do we separate fact from slander? Was your reign truly as chaotic and depraved as they claim, or are we reading a carefully constructed piece of political propaganda, designed to justify your murder and the succession of Alexander? Most historians agree that the basic outline of events is likely true. Your religion, your marriages to men, your gender non-functioning behavior, your conflict with the Praetorians. But the most lurid details, the human sacrifices, the smothering by rose petals, the brothel in the palace, are likely fabrications or gross exaggerations. You were not erased. Instead, you were rewritten. You were transformed from a complex, and likely very troubled, young person into a simple monster, a convenient villain for the official story of Rome. Your body is never recovered from the Tiber. It is carried out to sea, and you dissolve back into the elements, becoming a ghost in the Roman water supply. But your story, your true ghost, does not dissolve. It clings to the city, a persistent, uncomfortable stain on its memory. You are no longer a person, but you are not yet a myth. You are a fresh wound, and the official historians of the new regime are the surgeons who will now decide how that wound will be stitched up and what kind of scar it will leave behind. Back in the palace, a new order is established with breathtaking speed. Your cousin Alexander, now the Emperor Alexander Severus, is hailed as a restorer of tradition. He is guided by a powerful committee of women. Your formidable grandmother, Julia Mamae, they govern in his name, and they do so with a calculated conservatism. They undo everything you did. They court the Senate. They honor the old gods. They promote experienced men. Rome breathes a sigh of relief. The world, which you had turned upside down, is carefully set right again. A sense of dull, respectable normalcy returns. It is seen as a golden age of restoration. And as part of this restoration, your story is officially written. The version of you that will be passed down through the centuries is crafted in the immediate aftermath of your death, by the very people who benefited from it. Cassius, the senator who watched you with such disdain, picks up his stylus and records your reign as a moral catastrophe, a tale of Eastern decadence corrupting Roman virtue. His account is detailed, contemptuous, and hugely influential. Then, a century or so later, your ghost is summoned again by an author or group of authors we know only as the writer of the Augustan history. This is where your story enters the realm of the truly bizarre. This collection of biographies is one of history's great puzzles, a work that is part history, part satire, and part outright fiction. It's here that the most lurid, unforgettable, and likely untrue stories about you are given their full, theatrical expression. The tale of you smothering guests with rose petals, the lottery of dead flies, the dinner parties of a single color. This is where these strange flowers of slander bloom. The Augustan history turns you from a failed emperor into a Gothic monster, a figure of almost supernatural perversion. It is a work that historians use with extreme caution, like an ancient, beautifully decorated flask that might contain either priceless wine or deadly poison. And so you become a ghost with many faces. And this is the final, enduring debate you leave behind. Who was the real you hiding behind the silk veils and the layers of hostile propaganda? Were you a genuine religious visionary? A sincere, if clumsy, monotheist who believed you were bringing a higher truth to a world of outmoded gods? Was your attempt to unite the empire under a single sun god a failed glimpse of a future that would later arrive in a different form? Or were you simply a spoiled teenager, raised as a living god in a small town who was suddenly given absolute power and had no idea what to do with it? Was it all just a chaotic, indulgent game, your actions driven by nothing more profound than women and a desperate need for attention? Or, looking through a more modern lens, do we see something else entirely? A person engaged in a profound and desperate struggle with their own identity. In an age that had no words for what you might have been feeling, you used the only tools you had, clothing, religion, relationships, power, to try and express a truth about yourself that your world could not and would not comprehend. Was your reign a political failure, but a personal, tragic, and radical act of self-expression? You are the ghost that haunts the neat and orderly hallways of Roman history. You are the question mark at the end of a declarative sentence. You broke every rule, of gender, of religion, of politics, of being Roman. And in doing so, you ensured that you could never be truly erased. The chisels that removed your name from the stone only carved your story deeper into the imagination of the world. And so the echoes of this story, the tale of the boy who became a priest, who became an emperor, and then became a ghost, these echoes now begin to fade. Allow them to soften, to recede into the quiet background of your mind. The story has been told, and its purpose is now fulfilled. It was just a gentle path for your mind to walk upon, as your body found its own way toward rest. And now, at the end of that path, you can simply let it all go. The silks and the stones, the whispers and the shouts, all of it can drift away now, like dust motes dancing in a final, fading beam of moonlight. There is nothing left to understand, nothing left to follow. There is only this quiet moment, this comfortable stillness, this gentle, easy descent into the soft landscapes of your own dreams. The palace is empty, the city is asleep, and all is quiet in the deep, peaceful dull. Our journey together tonight ends here in this quiet place. Should you need another tale to accompany you further into rest, my library of stories is always open for you. May your dreams be kind. Good night.